Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for our moderator, Professor Dr. Sufyan Yusof.
Thank you very much, the Chair. I feel a bit awkward because I don't know how to use this. My hands, I need something to hold on to my hand. But I'm at the danger of being a rock star here. But I don't want to be a rock star. I have Nakib who will be the rock star. Okay, let's start. We are focusing on priority sectors by Selangor, but we are also looking at how we can position these three important industries or sectors within the ASEAN region. For example, at the moment we are looking at the ASEAN Open Sky issues, and one of those is not just about airlines being able to fly, but also support services and building airlines. So those are two important issues which our two speakers will be speaking about this afternoon. Then we have a third speaker on the issue of biotechnology, biodiversity, and also biosafety. They are all experts in their own field. On my immediate left, Mr. Nakib Muhammad Noor. He is the Chief Executive Officer of Strand Aerospace Malaysia. He spent some time working in the United Kingdom, and he's also now the pro-tem president of the Malaysian Aerospace Industry Association. In the middle, beautiful lady, my friend, Dr. Maha Lechmi Arjanan, or normally we call her Maha. Maha is a well-known lady in the field of biotechnology. She's one of the, I want to say something about this, the world's 100 most influential people in biotechnology. So this is our Maha here. Very proud of her. She's the Executive Director of Malaysian Biotechnology Information Center and Editor-in-Chief of Petra Dish. We were together at the beginning of the biotechnology era, at the beginning of the Malaysian Biotechnology Corporation on this issue. And then at the far left is one of the strong industrialists in aerospace industry, Datuk Zulkarnain Muhammad, who is the Operation Director of Spirit Aerosystems Malaysia Sdn Bhd. Who would imagine that Malaysians can actually build parts of aeroplanes. So if we don't contribute to that, we are not going to be able to get onto A380 or some of the Boeing planes. So let us welcome Datuk Zulkarnain Muhammad. So I don't like to read everything. So if you like to refer to the speaker's CV, I think they are on your conference pack. So I would like to first invite Mr. Nakib Muhammad Noor to give his presentation on the future of manufacturing and aerospace perspective. Please, yeah. So you are the rock star. All right.
Thank you very much. I'm a few different things in the country at the moment for the aerospace industry. The first question I had really for the audience, how many of you actually are aware of that we have an aircraft manufacturing industry? So we have just about 4 hands there. So a lot of you, this will be something, yes, thank you Agnes, very high hand there, very new. And I'm hoping that at the end of this session, at least from the aerospace representation side, myself and Datuk Zul, you'll be quite impressed by what it is that Malaysia is doing. I'll let Datuk Zul talk mainly about the aircraft manufacturing part of things. But so the company that I own and I'm CEO of Strand Aerospace Malaysia. What we do is we design parts of the aircraft, right? So we are just an outsource, effectively, from Toulouse, from Hamburg, and from the UK, from Hilton, of parts that need to be designed and then manufactured mostly either at Datuk Zul's plant or out in Europe. So designed in Malaysia, made in Europe, right? So I thought that would be quite a good idea to have in your head in terms of the capabilities we have in the country. And then from there, the Chief Technical Officer of Mara Aerospace and Technologies is a 100% owned entity by Mara, which is the biggest human capital agency in the country. Every year, Mara produces 5,000 engineers. And what my job there is to do is to look at apprenticeships and develop methods of training engineers to go straight into industry, right? So industry readiness. And finally, I was requested by the Minister of International Trade to be the president of the Malaysian Aerospace Industry Association. We just completed our AGM last week, so we are in the second year now of running, and we have some of the most prominent aerospace companies in the world on our board, right? So those are the three organizations I represent. I wanted to start with this slide. I was recently in these sessions with McKinsey, and the head of the Global Institute was in Malaysia for 2 days, and he's talked about these 4 major disruptions, right? I'm sure some people have covered this during the day, but what I thought this was quite important is that, particularly in Malaysia, disruption is not something that is well understood, right? The aerospace industry is an interesting one. Why? Because we operate at the apex of technology, effectively. Whether it's structural technology, systems technology, human capital technology, if you like, if I can put it that way, it's always at the apex. And therefore, we see this happening at some of the first people to see it. So the first one there talks about the age of urbanization, and the main point to take away from that is 440 cities, new cities, will be in the east, right? So the center of the world's economy will start shifting back towards the east, and I believe by 2025 it'll be somewhere near Kazakhstan. Yeah. So in Malaysia now, what are we predominantly? We're contract manufacturers in the manufacturing realm, right? We're not design and build value-adding manufacturers yet. And if this economy is moving in this direction, then certainly that's where we need to be, right? The second one is this accelerating technological change. I think everybody's familiar with this. The best example that they have there is, the radio took how long the radio took to be taken up versus Twitter, right? So the scale that you see there, in terms of the speed at which technology is adopted, is phenomenal, right? And this is only accelerating. I think the thing faster than Twitter now is Angry Birds. The fastest thing within 3 days, it was global, right? So the speed of technology change is going to increase, but there'll be an aging population in the world, right? And that says a lot about productivity. Because today you talk about manufacturing, you talk about young people in factories, but what's the future of manufacturing, right? And when you look at the productivity there, it's highly dependent on what it is that we're going to do with the aging population for them to be productive, right? And the final one here is greater global connection. This one, anybody with a handphone today will appreciate. You are much more connected to the world today. But what does that mean? It means that there's much more volatility in companies, right? You look at this at the S&P 500 price range, and over the years, the volatility has been increasing. Today, you see a tech company come up, in a short space of time and disappear in almost the same space of time, right? So with these big disruptions, I think it's important for Malaysians to start to get to grips with regards to the change that is happening. I've been involved with quite a few government programs recently, and I noticed that one of the biggest problems is that we don't really see the future happening. We're very much preoccupied with our manufacturing in our backyards, and the future is coming, and we're going to say that it'll come and then we'll react to it. And that seems to be the attitude, right? Certainly not what's happening in aerospace and manufacturing. So across the world, you see a whole bunch of initiatives. The most popular one in Malaysia is this branding industry 4.0, the fourth industrial revolution. This is the hyperconnectivity of equipment and things, right? The industrial Internet of Things, if you like. But you find every other country in the world actually has its own program. Yeah. So Malaysia is yet to launch its program up there. I think it was slated to be early this year, but I think they've, as they got into the business of it, they realized how big the thing is. So probably towards the end of the year, we will launch our own program. Having said that, about 2 months ago, Thailand launched Thailand 4.0, right? And if you look at a regional perspective, I think everybody is trying to get on the bandwagon. Now, let me speak on behalf of aerospace and the fourth industrial revolution. All these things that we see changing today, I can attest that as designers and manufacturers of aircraft parts, we are adopting it on a daily basis, right? As a service company, I have to react to my clients' needs instantly, and I have to know what my clients' needs are in the West, where the aircraft is finally being put together, right? So if they require a new skill set, a new technology capability, I need to know before they have to come over and tell me. In the past, I think most Malaysian companies are at a lower tier level of manufacturing. You know, what happens there is that you get second, third-hand information, and it takes several years before we catch up to what's happening abroad. In aerospace, it's not something that we can deal with, and you look at this, the level of data connectivity, the emergence of analytics and business intelligence capabilities as a requirement, right? So when you look at the factory shop floor today, I see some factory shop floors now reacting immediately to data that's being generated from the shop floor, from the machines themselves, right? New forms of human-machine interaction. Airbus, for example, that's the main company we work for. They have changed the system of aircraft design over every new aircraft that has come out, right? So now in the aerospace industry, you're a highly regulated industry, right? And Airbus will stipulate even what version of Microsoft Word you use, right? So in order for me to be able to work on several Airbus projects, you know, I have actually from Microsoft Word 1997 to today's version, just in case any one of these aircraft needs something adjusted on their documentation, right? And this is important, yeah, because what happens here is that the regulation has dictated a certain type of IT infrastructure and investment portfolio in a services environment, right? And then finally, you look at improvements in transferring digital instructions to physical world, such as advanced robotics and 3D printing. It all sounds very fanciful, but today you actually have some flying parts already which are 3D printed. Now, flying part which is 3D printed is no joke. An aircraft, if you go on your low-cost airline aircraft, your A320, you notice that it's only on the ground for what, 45 minutes maximum? It lands, it docks, the cleaners come in, clean it out, passengers are on, takes off again, and this thing doesn't stop. It just does this continuously until it has to do a maintenance. So I can't remember what the multiplier was. I think it was like 1,000 times or something in terms of the mileage that an aircraft will do on the runway compared to your car in its entire lifespan, right? So just taking off and landing, an aircraft will do much more mileage than your car. So in terms of utilization, it's a highly utilized piece of equipment. So to have a 3D printed object on it means that the technology has to be at that level where it can have that reliability, right? So that's important because today, if you're a machining company, in Selangor you have many machining companies, at which point will a 3D printed component be a requirement in your contract? And if you've bought a machine that's worth maybe 5 million ringgit or 3 million ringgit and you've amortized that over 7 to 8 years, and in the third year somebody says you have to have a 3D printed part into your complete assembly, you've probably just lost that contract, right? And I think these kind of awarenesses are not really there. I noticed in Malaysia, we do a lot of consulting for companies which are trying to come out of the contract manufacturing space into the high value manufacturing space, right? So, this is what Airbus is going to be launching at the end of this year. It's effectively a drone that carries a human being, right? I was recently having dinner with the head of manufacturing for the Airbus group, and it was interesting because this guy is in charge of effectively all the factories of Airbus, right? Every Airbus factory. So I sat down with him for an hour, and what I can say is I expected to have a conversation with this guy about, you know, spanners and machines and drilling and process, right? And he spoke about nothing of that. In fact, he spent the whole hour telling me about these things and what Airbus is going to do. Now, this is a very scary thing for someone who's in the supply chain, who's heavily invested in a certain set of skills, a certain set of equipment, right? Because we don't manufacture this today. I don't know what this is made out of, right? And if as a supply chain participant, I'm not ready for this, when it does come, I need to understand how much of Airbus's market is going to be this equipment as opposed to a turbojet, right? Other things in terms of big data, here you see GE Aviation stepping up in predictive maintenance efforts. So what they're doing now is trying to reduce the maintenance of the aircraft when you buy them. So anybody like Tony Fernandez who buys an aircraft actually doesn't want to do any maintenance. He just wants to use the aircraft, get passengers on it, passengers come off, pay the ticket, and that's it, right? He doesn't really want to know whether or not the aircraft is okay, does he need to pour any money into the maintenance, and so on and so forth. So predictive maintenance here is trying to get rid of the at least first 5 years of maintenance, and we've seen that in the design of the aircraft as we've gone along. Right? Slowly, they're trying to work out to remove maintenance out of the early life of the aircraft. Now, the second life of the aircraft is still something where maintenance is required, but I've seen now those aircraft can go up to 25 years today, right? The third life of the aircraft, which is the third 5 years and onwards, I have seen aircraft now being recycled. So maybe there's only 2 lives to the aircraft instead of 3. And the third life is just cannibalized for the first. And what you're seeing here is a cyclic, what they call a cyclic economy, the economy of recycling. And that's a whole side of manufacturing that doesn't exist yet in this region in any sort of form at a technology level like this, right? So you look at this as a job advertisement from Boeing recently. Look at what they're looking for. Someone with artificial intelligence, machine learning, advanced technology capability, right? That's for factory shop floor. So are we creating the kind of talent that can feed this industry that's coming? I think at the moment, there's certainly intentions along those lines that the government is looking at, but the understanding of what the actual challenge really is, I think, is something which there's a lot of work that needs to be done. So, aerospace specifically in Malaysia, we've had a few different things that have been happening, quite significant. I'll just highlight some of these things. So, Airbus Customer Services Malaysia is centered in Malaysia, so most of this was missed, it was in the newspapers and so on and so forth. But this is part of Airbus's new business strategy. Right? It has 4 centers in the world, one in Wichita in the US, which covers the whole of the US. There's one in Toulouse that covers all of Europe, I think until Russia. And then there's Airbus Customer Services China, because the market is so large there. But Airbus Customer Services Malaysia controls all of the rest of Asia. So any issues with an Etihad aircraft, an Emirati aircraft, goes to Sepang in Selangor. Right? That's where the expertise is that maintains and ensures that these aircraft are flying. Okay. So that is a big part of Airbus's new revenue, because as the low-cost airlines push the cost of the aircraft further down, what's happening is that the profitability of the aircraft business has to go into the maintenance side. This is something the engine manufacturers have been doing for a long time. So BMW, for example, today will sell you a car with the maintenance built in for the first 5 years and charge you up front for it, right? So that kind of business model is what the aircraft industry is going towards. I think eventually what will happen is that the aircraft manufacturers will provide the aircraft purely as a service, right? So AirAsia just buys a certain number of hours of flying. They turn up at the runway with a specification, I want an aircraft with this many seats and for this many business class and so on and so forth. An aircraft turns up, passengers go on, passengers come off, but they never have anything to do with the aircraft. That would be a service provided by Airbus. Right? So this is what Airbus Customer Services Malaysia represents. It's a strong foothold of Airbus in the region, centered in Malaysia. In 2015, I was involved directly in the negotiation of this contract here, where an auto manufacturer, UMW, manufactures all of the Toyota and Perodua cars in the country. So every second car in the country is manufactured by UMW. They decided that they needed to go up the value chain, because they've been contract manufacturers now for over 30 years with Toyota, and it's a 100-year-old company. But in that entire lifespan, it's not actually been able to develop really high-value engineering capabilities. So they've been very much tied into the OEM. Now, with the signing of the contract with Rolls-Royce, UMW has become a Tier 1 manufacturer to Rolls-Royce. That means if UMW stops manufacturing what is the fan case is the big case that holds the engine to the aircraft, then the A350 and the A350 and the 787 will not have engines. right? It's as simple as that. If they fail to deliver, the final assembly of the engine will stop. And that's a significant thing, considering UMW has no track record in aerospace at all, up to now. Now that tells you that these companies like Rolls-Royce are looking for new partners with new values that they can insert into the supply chain. Why? Because the orders for aircraft are, today we have a backlog, what, 36,000, roughly 36,000 aircraft that are on order and haven't been built. If you want to buy an A320, which is your AirAsia aircraft today, you go to Airbus and make an order, 9 years for you to get your delivery, right? There is a massive backlog and a massive opportunity in as far as manufacturing is concerned. A few other things have happened along the way as well. So Mara has been involved with developing supply chains, and finally in the Selangor you have the Serendah and the Sepang Aerospace parks. Yeah? This is to augment what's already in Subang, which is the center of aerospace activities today. Spirit Aerosystems is in Subang, as well as the major MROs, right? So Selangor, I think 60% of the aerospace industry is in this state and growing fast, right? So this is the kind of supply chain we need to set up. Unfortunately, because we are missing this guy, the guy who actually has an actual complete platform, we are plugging our industry into somebody else's supply chain, right? This can still be a very effective strategy. I think unlike China, which will be building its own aircraft, the COMAC 919 has just been launched, I think this year. Malaysia's strategy will be around OEMs such as British Aerospace, Airbus, and Boeing, right? And as a country, we need to look at quality investments, strong SME, medium industry leadership, and a robust human capital and R&D framework, right? And that framework is dependent on us really understanding how this ecosystem works, because what we find is a lot of our universities are engaged in R&D, but it's not really linked to the industry, right? So I think in terms of, if we looked at it as a business model, the spending over here at the moment is not translating to a value out here, right? So this is something to remedy because that investment is happening today. And this is what we're trying to do, get from contract manufacturer to here, high value manufacturer, right? So where in the traditional sense, what you had for manpower requirements is things like fundamental manufacturing skills, operational level, process understanding. When you're a high value manufacturer, you have to be able to develop processes, right? You need complex skills and deep process understanding, so you have to own your processes. Over here, you don't own your process. It tends to be a process that's coming from Japan or Germany or someone like that, set up, and then they do a micro process improvement as they go along. That tends to be the thing. But once you get to here, you need to own completely the process. Now, in aerospace, this is a prerequisite of the industry. The OEMs are pushing this responsibility out to the supply chain because they can't afford to sustain it in-house. The cost of it is too high, right? So the challenge with Southeast Asia is going to be how it is that the whole of the Southeast Asian economy can break away from a low-cost value proposition into something of a higher value. Now, obviously, we're at different levels of development. Malaysia is one of the most developed in aerospace, and then as far as aerospace manufacturing is concerned, is the most developed. But as an ASEAN agenda, I think a supply chain needs to be realized, right? So it's everybody's opportunity. And we need to change. Organizations, right? When you talk about high value manufacturing in aerospace, you talk about CEO with a vision and a strong technical maturity and hands-on involvement. Yeah? We tend to see the last two in some of our SMEs, but vision tends to be limited because you're not exposed to a high-tech industry, right? We need board of directors that are supportive and dynamic. We need senior management who are specialists and hands-on, and personnel who are intelligent, engaged, and invested. In Malaysia, oftentimes this is what we get instead. You know, we have short-term, bottom-line driven CEOs. They only want to know what's going to happen, you know, at the end of the year when they have to declare dividends. They have a 2-year contract. You know, this kind of short-term sort of thinking is going to be very detrimental to capability building. Boards of directors tend to be representative. They sit on the board, they provide their opinions, but then, you know, after they finish their board session, they go home, right? It's not really an ongoing engagement. The senior management tends to be task managers, so there's the classic whip, they whip on the factory shop floor, get people to deliver, and the workers are dispensable. If you don't turn up today, I'll get someone else to fill your shoes tomorrow, right? I think this kind of organization has got a very limited lifespan. The one at the top is where Malaysia needs to be. Now, the aerospace industry demands that from day one. A lot of companies which are now going from non-aerospace to the aerospace industry are finding this a big struggle to move from here to there because it's a complete change in culture and mindset. Right? You're looking at all of these elements: quality management, process control, leadership, technology, lean manufacturing, skills and planning development to a completely different level. So, with this, if I can put it in terms of a graph, now we've done an assessment of I think 10 to 15 companies already, from Penang down to Johor. The majority of Malaysian companies, right? So this is the entry point here for aerospace, the performer. We have made a start, but there's room for improvement. And here is where all your processes are already aerospace or high technology compliant. So the medical industry has a similar sort of standard, right? And then you're moving into contender and world class. Most of our companies fall in this level 1 and 2, right? So most of them have got some sort of they have a manufacturing capability, they have a reactive strategy, so a lot of them are spin-off. So let's say in Penang, you might have Motorola at the doorstep. The next Motorola employee comes out, forms a small machine shop, and does an offshoot of the machining work, and then grows from there. But he grows at the speed of Motorola. And what you find is that his investment strategy is very much tied into an internal conversation between him and Motorola. But it's not a roadmap of where he wants to be. And so road mapping the future of the company is not something most Malaysian companies will do. Right? That's essential, and aerospace OEM will not talk to you without a roadmap. They will not even bother with you, right? Because they want to see that if I put a 10-year contract, a 5 plus 5-year contract, there's a future with you, and you are planning that future with me and not asking me for handouts, right? So it's all about people at the end of the day, right? I can go on about this, but I think we all know about this. I think the key thing about building these kind of skills, I think technical ability is not an issue in Malaysia. Malaysians are very good with computers. Yeah, I think we had a hacker who hacked into the CIA about 2 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, a Malaysian hacker. So quality of technical ability is not an issue, but when we look at coordination, critical thinking, complex problem solving, emotional intelligence, it's not something that you associate with technical people in Malaysia. It's almost split. That's management, who earn more money than people who do technical, who will always earn a certain amount of salary. These things do not meet, right? So my proposition really for the future is apprenticeships. This has to come back. It's coming back everywhere else in the world, in Germany, in France, in the UK. People have to learn hands-on. University education is something to be done in parallel with an occupation. And I think if we work in this sort of way, we will be able to accelerate the human capital. If you take a 16-year-old today, you put him in a factory, or you put him in an engineering house, he's happy that he has a job, and he will dedicate his time to you. You put a 22-year-old that's just graduated from university and thinks he knows everything. It'll take you 3 years to bring him down to ground in order for him to realize that actually he's got to work on the details and get good at the simple things before he can do something complex, right? So in actual fact, you're losing many years without the apprentice system in place, and I don't think the country can afford that. So that's my input, and hopefully that feeds very well into Datuk Zul. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Nakib, for the very interesting presentation on the landscape of the aerospace industry in Malaysia. And there are a lot more things to do. A lot of things have been done, but a lot more things to do. And I think the biggest challenge will be how do we cope with the new disruption of IR 4.0. That's the biggest challenge. And I think universities are not really prepared for that as well. Okay, let's go in between aerospace. We tried something different. Bio, maybe bio can also do something about aerospace. Maha, you're most welcome to share your views on biotechnology.
time the commercial break in between the two aerospace experts here. I'm not going to link my talk to ASEAN, but I'm going to talk about ecosystem of what is required to spearhead biotechnology and bioeconomy or biobusiness. This is now becoming a buzzword. Biotechnology became a buzzword in Malaysia even during Tun Mahathir's time, and he did a great job by having a vision which was changed to some other strategies, but it has been going on and we have got strong agenda from the government, which is good. But I think the real ecosystem is where the implementation. This is always the missing link in Malaysia. So I'm going to touch a little bit of what is required, and it's just going to be a very, very short overview of biotechnology. I don't know in this room how many of you come from any bio or life sciences background or doing work in life sciences. Anyone? Okay, only one. So since there's not many in biotechnology, because even when I visit my doctors and then they ask me what you do, I say I'm trained in biotechnology, I'm a science communicator, and the minute they hear the word biotechnology, they say, what is it? And I'm always surprised because I thought, everything that we do today, Dr. Sufyan was right, even in aerospace, we're talking about biofuel these days. Singapore Airlines has already flown the first aeroplane from Singapore to San Francisco, I think, using biofuel. So in every industry there is applications for biotechnology. So I'm always surprised that doctors don't know, because almost all the drugs that they prescribe come from biotechnology applications. So before I go to the areas in biotechnology, let me explain what is biotechnology. Just the word, as the word is, bio and technology, it is the technology applied to any biological system. So when I say any biological system, it could be the whole organism, and the whole organism can be plants, can be animals, can be anything from microbial. So it could be virus, bacteria, fungus, amoeba, anything. And it could be animals, plant, microbes, human being. So when we apply technology to the organism as a whole, or to parts of the organism, just the leaf, just the enzyme, it is also biotechnology. So anything that comes out, the products and the services that comes out from this technology, that is biotechnology. The real classical ones, ancient ones, is yogurt, for example, cheese, and every culture has got cheese. Even the Arabs used to have milk, and they used to travel, and it becomes fermented. But today, it is really becoming very, very advanced. So, in biotechnology, there are at least three main areas. I've also added marine biotechnology, because I think marine has got a lot of potential in Malaysia. We have got a long coastal line both in Peninsula and Sabah Sarawak. So, if we look at medical biotechnology, which is it takes the biggest segment worldwide. In the global scenario, medical biotechnology takes the biggest segment in terms of GDP and business value, market value. So medical biotechnology is developing enzymes, vaccine, antibiotics, tissue engineering, and even diagnostic systems, medical devices. So anything we do in the hospital that is required in the pharmaceutical line or medical line, it comes under medical biotechnology. In Malaysia, agri-biotechnology has got the biggest market share. If we look at the BioNexus status, a status that has been given to biotechnology companies in Malaysia, just like those days IT companies got MSc status. So in Malaysia, agri-biotechnology takes the bigger pie, and agri-biotechnology is development of new crop varieties. It could be using any technology. It could be conventional technology using mutagenesis. A lot of the crops that we grow today, food that we eat, are actually mutated. Mutated because they have been exposed to chemicals deliberately so that we get nice physical characters, or mutated because they are exposed to radiation. It could be conventional breeding, the rice that we grow, or it could be through molecular biology, genetic engineering, changing genes in the crops. We've got fertilizers, diagnostics again, a lot of plant pests, and we've got a lot of plant diseases, so we need diagnostics. Aquaculture, which has got huge potential again in Malaysia. Animal breeding, livestock and poultry. And then there is industrial biotechnology. To me, this is one of the hottest in the market now because there are a lot of potential things that we never imagined before is using biotechnology. For example, spider silk. We all know the silk that we wear, which comes from silkworm. But spider silk has got the strongest tensile strength. And the Americans, what they have done, they have extracted spider silk and they have done bulletproof armors for soldiers. And it has got a lot of other users, industrial users as well. Orange rind, now companies are using orange rind, use orange rind, instead of throwing it away, they are using it to produce silk-like material to come out with fabrics. And they are also coming out with shoes from orange rind. So we can look at all these things as green technology because what has been wasted, what has been thrown away, and it causes a huge environmental impact, negative impact, can now be converted to industrial very useful compounds. So it could be enzymes for F&B, for example. It could be biofuel, high value compounds for any use, any industrial use. The jeans that we wear, a lot of people like faded jean. How did faded jean come about? It is stone washed. So the stones cause friction and it gives it the worn effect. But today they are using enzymes, which is so much better because the fabric does not become worn out. You get that faded effect, but the fabric is still new. So these are the things that's coming out in industrial. And then marine biotechnology. How do we have aquatic, how do we apply technology to our aquatic applications, marine, even in biodiversity, in conservation, for environmental reasons. And even extracting things from our marine. There are so much of biodiversity in the sea. And this could be turned into useful compounds for all the other sectors. It could be useful compounds for medical, for industrial, or even agriculture. Food as well. So there are huge potential in this area. But biotechnology, unlike all the other technology that we have prospered using with manufacturing. It is not the same rules for biotechnology because it's slightly unique in the sense that biotechnology is completely multidisciplinary. To get one product out to the market, we can't just have one type of expert. That team has to work with so many different types of experts. For example, genetically modified crops, for example. You need soil scientists, you need entomologists, you need molecular biologists, botanists. We need so many experts. The same with drug development. We need IT. We need IT experts in drug development. So there is a need to work closely, no more silo mentality. In this area, we really need to work with a lot of people. And it is also long gestational period. Whether it is for research, it takes a long time to do the research, or even to commercialize. Once research is done, to come out to the market, it takes a long time. So we need the stamina. And I think here is the problem with Malaysia, where we want to see things moving very fast. We want to see things coming out very fast. Just like what Mr. Najib was saying, that the CEO wants to do things when he's in term and get it done. But in biotechnology, it doesn't happen like that. I'll show you some in my next coming slides. I show you at least 2 examples. It requires very, very high investment. If you're talking about something low-hanging fruit, then that's okay. But low-hanging fruit, we can't go international. So it requires very, very huge investment, and this is where the ecosystem is growing, but it is not as good as the models we are looking outside. We are looking at Bay Area and San Francisco. It's completely a different ball game. And interesting, or unfortunately, maybe low manpower is required for biotechnology. So we are actually coming out with lots and lots of talent. A lot of universities offering biotechnology because of it's glamorous and everyone is talking about it. But it is very, very different compared to any other manufacturing sector. A billion-dollar company can run with just 50 people. But these 50 people are highly skilled workers. And this is what we need to look at. Everything is becoming robotic, even in biotechnology. How we analyze things, robots can do that. So it is something, a challenging thing, because how can we then offer the job opportunities? So here's where we need more and more companies to come in. One company cannot employ a few thousand people like what happened in the manufacturing sector. So what we need is, we need the policies, which is quite good. We'll see how all these things have been. I'm going to just briefly, sorry. I think we have done very well in policies. Since even before 2005, because why I'm saying 2005 is that was when we launched, at the federal level, we launched the National Biotech Policy. And even before that, there was already a vision for biotechnology. So with the 2005 National Biotech Policy, the roadmap was done. So we have Biotechnology Corporation, which is renamed last year as Bioeconomy Corporation, because the government wants to see more economy generated from biotechnology. So we have the policies, we have regulations in place. Dr. Sufyan and I were working very, very hard to get science-based regulations. Here is a very, very thin line for regulations in biotechnology, because we do not want to have very stringent regulation that will stifle research, development and commercialization. But we do not want to have everything loose, because biotechnology can be a double-edged sword as well. We need to regulate so that whatever comes out from the lab is safe. Safe for human beings, safe for our livestock, safe for environment. Now we are talking about bioethics, biosecurity. So these are things that we really need to be very careful, because in biotechnology, basically we can do just anything. And it just needs some time for perfection. For example, synthetic biology, we can put all the genes together and come up with completely new organism. And we can get this organism to do what we want the organism to do. But if something goes wrong and it is released into the environment, then that's where the problem starts. But then the scientists are not worried about that, because we know it's really highly regulated. So here is where regulation is required. And I think in Malaysia we have got pretty much very good regulations, whether it's for agriculture or pharmaceutical industry. So that is quite well done in Malaysia. Then we need talent. Now the reason why I put a question mark with a tick there is, I concur with the previous panelist, answering Munir. He said, do we have the cognitive skill? Do we encourage cognitive skill among our students? Argumentative, creativeness, innovative. I think this is where we really have to nurture our young people. And this is lacking in the Malaysian culture, in Malaysian education system, in Malaysian schools. So that is still a problem, and that is why we see a lot of programs are up there for retraining the graduate. Initially, I used to ask, why do we have to retrain the graduate? They're already trained. They're supposed to, as soon as they graduate, they're supposed to be entering the market. But we saw that wasn't happening, especially in the biotechnology area as well. So we have lots of training, and I used to sit on a lot of programs to retrain the graduates. Now, here is number 5, is another big problem, our stamina and perseverance. As I said, we want everything to be a shortcut. We go to San Francisco, we look at that and we think we can build that within 5 years. And San Francisco took so many years to build their Bay Area. So it cannot happen overnight. We really need, we need to make sure that we put effort for a long period of time before we see the result. And the culture is also, the American culture is, they are used to failures. But for us, we are not used to failures. We want to do something, and we want to make sure that we want to make sure that whatever we venture in will become a success. But if you look at the Bay Area, there's so many failure companies. They start again, they try somewhere else, and they try something else. So we need that type of culture. And also the bodies that provide funding, Ministry of Science or Ministry of Education. Now what they expect is funding is given for 5 years and the product must be out in 5 years. And that is not the case for biotechnology. Unless we want the low-hanging fruit, which I'll also talk about later. Research priorities. Our research priorities is spread everywhere. 1 year it will be this one, another year it will be something else. Now that is not going to work. Our research priority must be really analyzed and focused on what we want to do, and that must be based on our strength and the challenges that we face in Malaysia. What are our challenges for farmers? What are the challenges for consumers? What are the medical challenges? Dengue, for example, it is a huge challenge. But what are we doing about it? So our research priorities must be based on local problems, but which can also can take to the global level. But this is where we are lacking. Our research priorities is everywhere, and we don't follow it through until it comes to the fruition, until it comes to the commercialization. So these are the environment culture that we need to change. So as I mentioned, there's the research culture. So as I said, the policies are all there, very well done. National Biotech Policy, Biotechnology Transformation Program, we were the second in Asia to have it, after China. And we have that only after five months after US as well. Then we have got the National Agro Policy. So the policies are there, but we need to look at how it can be implemented according to the policy and not have a flip-flop in the middle of the period. Regulations, as I also mentioned, biosafety regulations that governs and monitors all the LMOs. LMOs are living modified organisms, whether it's bacteria or crops. How is genetically modified organisms, how is the research done, how is it released into the market, how is it commercialized? The biosafety regulation covers that. Then we have got very good IPR. So this is where our strength is. And also the pharma-related acts, GMP, and we can, if we produce any biosimilars or generics or drugs, we can actually send it, export it to Europe, because we have all these things in place. But the problem is the biotechnology in Malaysia, the bio business, we are still looking at either the ground fruit or the low-hanging fruit. The reason is because we do not have a strong research in our universities. Our research priorities change. And also our appetite for basic research. This is what is very important for biotechnology to grow. This is not well understood by our policymakers and politicians. Because they think they can just go into applied research and immediately apply it and get some product out. It doesn't work like that. If you want to kill mosquitoes, you can't just kill mosquitoes using anything. You must study the mosquito's pathways. Which pathway do I want to inhibit in the mosquito, so that if I inhibit one particular enzyme in its respiratory cycle, then I kill the mosquito. So, but what we do is we take a plant and then we test it with any cancer cell, it kills cancer, this plant kills cancer. It doesn't work like that. How does it kill cancer? Does it also kill other cells? How does the tumorigenesis has to be understood? So that is basic research. And I don't think this is understood by our policymakers. That is why they keep asking, when is your product going to be out? I'll show you how the products, the value chain of a product. So we are still in the ground fruit, low-hanging fruit. We do fertilizers, we do effective microbes, we do health supplements. So in agriculture, it is fertilizers, effective microbes just to add on to the soil. In healthcare, it is health supplements and functional food. So when are we going into biosimilars and drug development? We spoke about drug development, now that has been dropped because they realized that it's very, very far away. It's really a tall order. I just came back from Iran 2 weeks ago, and it's just amazing what happens in Iran. They are developing drugs, they are producing biosimilars, and when I entered, I went to 2 companies and a few research institutes. When I entered their companies, it is just, you close your eyes, you don't listen to their Persian, you feel like you are in the US. So that is a type of research and the environment they do. Speaking of research culture from my previous slide, I went into the labs and every lab is bustling with activities. At least 10, not less than 10 researchers working in the lab. You walk into our labs, you will find empty labs. Now this is what we need to change. So this is what I said, Malaysian biobusiness, aromatherapy, herbal. Now it is not bad because it provides jobs, it provides GDP, it creates income for some people. But it is time that we move the value chain. So from here we need to move up. This is what we need to do. We have some very good companies as well. We've got genomics, diagnostics, pharma, industrial biomass, and science. We've got some very good companies, but they are fewer than the lower hanging fruit. So what we hope is it's not a bad idea to start low because we gather our strength, but it is time that we move up the chain, the value chain. So we need, how can we go into drug development is really far away, but at least we can get into biosimilars, for example. GM crops, we have got a lot of research, but it's really at the infancy. Vietnam has done so much of research and they've already put GM crop in their farm. They grow BT corn. Thailand has got their papaya, but because of activism, they have put it to stop. But they have really done very good research as well. So industrial biotechnology, when are we going to move on to recombinant technology, which is using microbes, modified microbes, and get them to do what we want them to do. Microbes can actually ferment sugarcane and make tires, make rubbers. This is already being done. So these are things that we are still far away. High value compounds and animal breeding. Now the other thing with Malaysia is we think agriculture is something of the past. So we don't have plant breeders, we don't have soil scientists, we don't have animal breeders. These are the things that our young people think it's not glamorous, but these are the things that's really important. So why are we looking at low-hanging fruit? As I said, the IPR legal regulations and policies are very good in Malaysia. In fact, that actually attracts a lot of investors. Even the previous speaker, with Dr. Victor Gao and Mr. Ashwin said that we have got very good IPR compared to Laos and Cambodia. So that are the strong areas. But we need our research culture, research priority, going back to fundamental research, funding, leadership, culture of innovation, and collaboration, and the postdoc culture is still not here as well. This is what happens in a Bay Area. Who does the startups are the postdocs. While they're doing the postdoc, they see viable projects, they quickly spin off companies. And that's why they have so many startups and they build up the startups. So if we look, for example, this is what we see in a drug development. It doesn't happen over 2 years, 3 years. It takes 15 years to get a drug. And that too,
can you do it in 2 minutes?
Yes, I'm finishing. So that too, if you look at 10,000 compounds, finally in 15 years we only get one compound. This is the nature of biotechnology. And now, if you look at genetically modified crops, it's the same thing. If you plus all the months, it comes to 15, 16 years. And that is how it's done. So there's no way that we can have something in 1 year, 2 years. And funding, we need various types of funding. We need government funding, we need angel funding, crowdfunding, family and friends, and bank loans. So this ecosystem must be in place so that biotechnology companies can thrive. So in Boston and Bay Area, this is the statistics for Boston and Bay Area. It's really a long journey for us to be there, but it is good to have this dream. And it is good to emulate them, but it has to be adapted to local culture, local strength, and local resources. We cannot just, it's not plug and play. So this is what I say, a balanced ecosystem. If we have like now Selangor Bio Bay, for example, is a very good idea, very energetic people there, and this is what it should have. It should have startups, it should have MNCs, universities, incubation sites, venture capitals, research institutes, and the talent. So this is what it will drive the ecosystem. I'm done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ma. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
Thanks a lot. That's a very good introduction to biotechnology industry. I think the game here is about changing the mindset, right? We need to change the mindset. We cannot get results immediately. This is a science plus arts plus any other things that need a lot of attention. For example, we work together on biosafety. And when I started looking into biotechnology, I'm a trained lawyer. Way back in 1999, someone asked me what law has got to do with biotechnology. And when the Swiss government set up a team of people to look into the international trade of biotechnology way back in 2004, I was one of those who were called in by the Swiss to be in Bern looking into these international regulations of biotechnology. And we are still lacking those issues in Malaysia. people are not really looking into the global perspective of biotechnology or any technology at all. We want quick results, so that's the big problem. So now let's go back to aerospace. Dr. Zul is willing to share his experience in producing components for major aircraft producers. Please, Dr. Zul.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat datang. Good afternoon. Again, my name is Zulkarnain Mohammed. I'm the operations director for Spirit Malaysia. Spirit Aerosystem is an American company which is based in Wichita, Kansas, and I'll go through some of the sites that we have. But just to share what aerospace industry has transformed in Malaysia since in the 80s. I think I'm one of the lucky ones who's been in aerospace industry in Malaysia for the last 29 years. So I've seen from being an MRO-based industry to manufacturing-based industry, we transformed in the 1990s. Again, it all started out when we started making the Eagle aircraft in 1991-92. So was our stepping stone into commercial aircraft business. What we're talking about is opportunities and trends in the airline manufacturing. Practically, we're talking about the Airbuses and the Boeing's aircrafts. Right? So, just to give you some idea of what we're doing in Malaysia right now for the commercial airlines or commercial aircrafts. Every time you go onto an AirAsia aircraft A320, so every time at landing, when you see those flaps or those spoilers comes out, those are all made in Malaysia. Right? On the A320 itself, we cover about 20% of the wing in terms of panels, composite panels. And for the newer Airbus aircraft, the A350, so again, every time you see the aircraft, there's a light, the landing light right on the wings. That road and fixed fairing is designed by Najib and manufactured by Spirit Subang. So again, you look at 350, you look at the landing lights, that's made in Malaysia. So, and the other thing on the 787, the whole leading edge from here, that end, that's all made in Malaysia. Yeah, so we assemble it and it's shipped to Japan for the assembly of the wings. And the other thing that is not here is on the Airbus A380. We make the largest parts on the wings of the A380. So again, we are covered in most of the commercial aircraft in the world right now. So quickly, I'm just looking at the Spirit's view in terms of the supply chain or the ecosystem. Right, just an introduction to Spirit Aerosystem. Again, we are based in Wichita, Kansas. We are on all the Boeing and Airbus programs. There is a backlog of nearly 12,000 aircraft right now, which is firm orders from airlines. And our backlog, Spirit backlog alone is about 47 billion. And we cover fuselages, propulsion units, and wings. Right? And then we have Wichita or Kansas, and we have places in Oklahoma, and a brand new facility in Kingston, North Carolina, for making the 350 barrel fuselage. And we also have Prestwick in Scotland, Saint-Nazaire in France. Xinjiang in China is an MRO facility. And also we have Malaysia. Right. So Wichita is predominantly or mostly Boeing business, Boeing aircrafts. Wichita used to be Boeing anyway. Spirit took over in 2005. and when Spirit was created. So you have Subang, sorry. So you have Subang and Scotland, predominantly Airbus. North Carolina is A350 Airbus, Saint Nazaire is Airbus. But at this point in time, Spirit's business is about 70% Boeing, 30% Airbus. Right. So we're looking at Malaysia as the hub for Asia. Right? You look at the statistics. Again, this is just Airbus backlog. The 310 single aisle, A330, 340, 350, and 380. Airbus alone has 6,700 aircraft in backlog. Their projections for the next 20 years is about 35,000 aircraft that's needed. And you can see that 30% or 40% is all in the Asia Pacific region. Right? Boeing and Airbus numbers are quite similar, even though there's a slight variations. But you look at Asia Pacific, that's where the growth is. And in terms of value, we're talking about $2.3 trillion worth of manufacturing. Right? If I go to, this is Airbus stats. If you go to Boeing stats, they have 5,700 aircraft in backlog, and they're looking at Asia Pacific, about 15,000 new aircrafts, which is about 2.5 trillion. Again, the numbers are quite balanced between the two. So, and you look at Asia Pacific in terms of the demands, again, the same statistics I just seen just now, right? But for Spirit, sorry, go back. We have about 52 suppliers, Spirit Income as a company in the Asia region. And Malaysia is the only manufacturing site for Spirit here. So we're looking at creating that ecosystem for Malaysia and for Wichita. We're looking at, of course, we're looking at cost savings and how do you create an efficient supply chain around this area. Right. So in terms of growth opportunities in Asia, I think the numbers is much larger than this. I think this is just 2016 numbers, but I think that's triple the size now. Because Malaysia alone, we are about 160 million US annually. So we're going ahead to 200 and maybe 250 million over the next 5 years. Right? Again, APAC is growing in terms of numbers for demands. I think no more than nearly half of it is mostly in China. And that's why Airbus have a assembly plant in China. And again, we'll be looking at how to work with Airbus on that part of the manufacturing. There's also regional aircraft, not just Boeing and Airbus. There's Embraer, C-Series by Bombardier. And then there's MRG, Mitsubishi, regional jets. The China Comac C919. Those are, again, upcoming. Again, they have a very tough position fighting or competing against Airbus and Boeing. But I think they will grow. The other market that we're looking at is, again, MRO operators. Again, there is balancing act that needs to be done because Airbus and Boeing is trying to gain back into that market. And again, more than 50% of new airport investment is in APAC. I went to China about 4 or 5 years ago, and one of their development plan is to grow to the west. They're not going to go with roads and rails. They're just going to go with aircraft. Okay? They're going to be building more airports. It's easier to maintain and it's faster for people to travel. And one of the important stuff in managing or in participating into the industrial 4.0 for Malaysia is trying again to balance the needs between labor, which we think is our competitive edge, against technology. Yeah? We cannot just be selling our edge as the cheap labor anymore, because technology is going to be a lot more competitive right now. Okay. 3D printing is a start. In fact, Spirit has signed an understanding for research and development with a company in US to start 3D printing titanium parts. Because one of the hardest material to get for aerospace is titanium. So we're looking at, we've signed it during the Paris Air Show this year. So we'll be looking at 3D printing all those titanium parts. Again, that's going to be in the next 5 years, not current or immediate. So where are we? Just going to talk about Asia, Malaysia supply chain. We've got 56 suppliers from us, right? China we have 12, India has 4, Korea has 13, Japan 8, Taiwan 5, Vietnam 1, Thailand 3, Malaysia 7, Indonesia 1, and Australia 2. Okay. So for Malaysian industry, we need to do a lot more. That's why we need to be promoting the ecosystem in Malaysia harder than what we've been doing for the last maybe 10, 15 years. Yeah, because if not, we'll be losing some of the business out. We've seen businesses goes out to Korea. That's where sometimes you don't understand why Korea can be more competitive than us. When we say that we're, I wouldn't say a low-cost country anymore, but competitive. So we're losing business to other people right now. Even, I said, for Spirit Malaysia, we're suppliers for, main supplier for the 787 parts is coming from Vietnam and Thailand. Right? So we need more. We need a better ecosystem for Malaysia to grow in this business. It has to be done now. There's two competition. Asia region, the other thing is the 4.0 technology. Because we will be losing parts or manufacturing back into the Western countries. Right? So, showing volume, okay, this is what we have in terms of, for Subang alone, our 320 parts, 99% or 98% of the parts comes from local suppliers. We have CTRM, UPK, SMEA as our base suppliers for the A320. For 350 is a combination, is global. 787 is mostly in Thailand and Vietnam. And again, we're working on the 737 doors. Again, that's going to be mostly from Korea. So again, we need to be doing something to combat against those two, the Asia region and also Industry 4.0. I think important thing is our goal to have 100% local. That's Spirit's Malaysia aspiration. We need to have more local players, not just the 4 that we currently be using. We need to be developing them. I think that's part of our blueprint for 2030 to create more local players. So hopefully these initiatives by people like the Selangor state, we will be able to create more opportunities and more companies here. Again, this is a typical triangle or pyramid in the ecosystem. We have OEM, which is again the Boeing and the Airbuses. Tier 1s like Spirit, GKN. We have suppliers, again, formulation examples. We have CTRM, UPECA, SMEAs, and again, we don't have a tier 3 in Malaysia. There's not a lot of tier 3s. We're just creating that now. And also, to be vertically integrated, we need tier 4s, which means raw material suppliers. We don't have those. Again, granted that aerospace approval to get materials is tough, but at least we need the raw material suppliers to be stationed here in Malaysia, right? Like Hexcel, or we have EMS for metallics, but again, it's still small. So we need to be creating that more. We've also, again, for me, I was pleasantly surprised that we have about 3 or 4 companies that's doing plastic molding for aerospace. They're doing mostly for seats, and in Penang and in Kulim. Again, that's a very, very good indicator, or very good progress, because we don't have to chase for all those glamorous big parts, because the plastic parts are where the volume are. It's very, very high volumes in terms of, for aerospace. Yeah? Aerospace volume is low. We're talking about, Airbus is delivering about 600, or no, sorry, maybe 700 aircraft a year. Yeah? But again, this is the time where the volume for rate is getting higher. For 320, the Airbus single aisle is going, right now we're doing 54 aircraft a month, to go into 60 aircraft a month, and we're going to 63 aircraft a month. Right now they're talking about 70 aircraft a month in the next 2 years. So there, you're talking about maybe every day there's 2 aircraft going out from Toulouse for the A320. The same goes for Boeing 737. They're going from rate 47 to rate 52. So that's unprecedented, previously unheard of in aerospace. When we first started on the A320, we were doing 24 aircraft a month. And everybody thinks that's high. So now we're doubling, more than double the numbers. So again, there are opportunities, and it's a very niche or a very focused business in aerospace right now. If you go to Airbus aircraft, their main focus is A320, A321neos, and 330, 350. Boeing is putting in 777, 737, and also 787. Yeah. Right. These are the things that, again, is a hindrance to us, is a challenge to us, is a hurdle to us, and it can be an advantage to us. Right? Barriers to entries, especially for aerospace, high investment. If you're into composites, the investment is so high in terms of toolings upfront. So that's where the government or fundings is very, very important. Customer approvals, very, very tight, very, very stringent industry. We need to get the OEM's approval to do anything. They control everything. Exacting standards, again, very strict. Long-term view, low margins. Aerospace is not, in terms of, the product is sexy, but in terms of margin, it's not. I can tell you that. You're talking about 4 to 6% max, if you're lucky. But it's long-term, it's granted. It doesn't go yo-yo on you. It's very stable. Even though, like, when we had that SARS issue 10, 15 years ago, the industry doesn't drop down. It drops down a bit, then it comes back again. So it's very stable. Once you're in the business, you usually stay in the business. Continuous audit requirements, again, minimum, the OEMs will come into your place once a year, at least. But then you have other audits that you need to deal with. You have your ISO, you have your AS9100, you have your NetCaps, you have a few other stuff. So at least can minimum from 5 audits to 10 audits a year. Easy. Then you have your product audits. And then safety. Safety is definitely paramount. The way that I like to introduce the industry to my newly recruits is just remember that this aircraft flies at 50,000 square feet. If anything's wrong, you can't park it on roadsides. And it can be your family that's in the aircraft. So no shortcuts. That's what we always tell. That's what we always tell our recruits. No shortcuts. We cannot afford shortcuts. Rewards, again, it says healthy backlogs. We've got 12,000 aircraft. If you are on Boeing and Airbus together, Asia growth trend, we are definitely growing. And the next biggest thing is you have to be on the next generation aircraft. Right? And right now, previously, 2010, they would say that new aircraft will come out in 2017. They scrapped the idea, they extended the current variants. So, looking at 2025 as a new aircraft variants coming out. So if you're good in what you're doing right now, your quality is good, your cost is good, your delivery is good, you'll be on. So it's going to be a long-term business. And then enabling route to become 4.0. Again, I cannot emphasize more that we need to be on the manufacturing 4.0 to be competitive again. Enablers, talent development. I think there's no lack of talents here in Malaysia. We have programs that caters for all this. And communication is good against the rest of the region because I think in terms of English, spoken English is good. Quality system, again, we are quite mature because we've been in the commercial business for the last maybe 17 years now. We started commercial business in 2010. In the year 2000. So we've been in this business for the last 17 years. So we know how to deal with the quality system and how to manage the quality system. Continuous improvement mindset. I can tell you that Spirit Subang is the benchmark for the Spirit company in terms of continuous improvement. We've been very, very strong in terms of continuous improvement and trying to maintain our quality and trying to maintain our productivity. And again, we are globally competitive, but we need to do a lot more to maintain our competitiveness. And adoption of appropriate technology. Again, we need to be researching that. We're still doing this AMIC that's helping in terms of research. Again, we still need to do a lot more in terms of research and development. Right, my last slide. This is how hard it can be to become a supplier. It can be frustrating sometimes, but if you persevere, like what Dr. Mahal was saying, it has to have some perseverance in terms of getting into this business. It takes, just to get new supplier approval, minimum 3 months to a year. Depends on your performance. Right? So we have to go a lot of this assessment done, facilities approval, your quality system approval, and finally your product approval. And then again, transfer of work, that's when you are an approved supplier, they'll be giving you a lot more work. So you have to do your transfer of work. That's where, again, you have to do your last article, and our current model is doing current article, so it has to be exactly the same part as the last manufacturer. So that's another challenge that the aerospace industry is putting. So,
all under one name.
again, so in conclusion, it's just that for Malaysian aerospace industry, we need to be doing a lot more to compete in this global world, global aerospace industry. And there's a lot of competitions coming up very, very quickly. So we need a lot of support. And we're thankful, like, for the government of Malaysia to be putting in a lot of focus on aerospace, because we do have a Malaysian Aerospace Council chaired by the Prime Minister himself trying to look at how do you progress the aerospace industry in Malaysia. And also Selangor had just started the Selangor Aerospace Council this year. So again, we're pushing the aerospace agenda into as one of the big industry in Malaysia. So I think with that, I conclude my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Zul, for the insight into the manufacturing of aircraft components. So from these three presentations, what I can say is we need the right talent, not just in aerospace, but also in biotechnology. I'm sure in other new technologies as well, we need the right mix of talents. And those who produce the talents must work together with the industry. I think there's a big mismatch at the moment between universities and the industry. They're working towards that, but still there's a lot more to be done. And then another takeaway is about the ASEAN integration and competition. We want to integrate, but at the same time we see competition from neighbors. In this aerospace and biotechnology, both Singapore and Thailand, they are working hard to make it happen in their countries. And I see some of my friends from Laos, Savan Park, for example, they have one manufacturer of helicopter component in Savan Park. I visited one of them many years back. So there's one of example of new ASEAN member states venturing into this area as well. And so this shows that if we lack drive, we lack compassion, and we lack talents, then people will move away within ASEAN, because we have competitors who are also our friends in this region. And we need appropriate technology. That's also very important in these two fields of aerospace and biotechnology. We are like 7 minutes behind time, but I would like to give the opportunity to participants to ask few questions, maybe in a very short, sweet and sharp. Introduce yourself and straight to the point. Please, if you have anything to ask to our distinguished panelists. I count up to 3, otherwise I will close the session. 1, 2, 3. Now, anyone, please? No? Okay, if there's no question, I would like to thank once again our distinguished speakers and panelists, Mr. Nakib Muhammad Noor, Dr. Maha, and Dr. Zulkarnain Muhammad, for being with us today. Let's show our appreciation by giving them a round of applause.